Welcome everybody to our third session in our Lunch and Learn group, which is password management. And Tim, I couldn't be more excited about this one. Just this morning, I was told my favorite password has been compromised. I thought this was such a good password too. Anyway, Tim Street is with us today. He's on our business development management team. And he's also on our security team, so this topic is near and dear to his heart, and I can't wait to hear how he's going to talk us all into password manager. Thanks, Tim. Welcome.
Thank you, Victoria. Hi, everyone. Yes, I know that password managers are something that Victoria gets very excited about, so I am obviously here to encourage everyone to get a password manager. And Victoria said that I could do hundreds of slides, so get ready for a big slideshow. So the premise behind the password managers is that the worst thing you can do is to reuse a password. Now, obviously, the worst thing you can do is probably to have a password that is password or password 123, but ideally, no one's quite that silly. So if we exclude all the silly passwords, the worst thing we can do is reuse a password. And the problem comes when we reuse some random password that we think, oh, it's not important, it's fine, I'm just going to use it at some random site, and it gets used all over the internet as we move around on our various sites. And then somehow the bad guys get our information. And the problem there is, he says, going to his next slide, going to share this, is if I just put in my email address and I look at one of these sites that does have I been pwned, it gives us a list of where our accounts have been breached. And if I look through my account, I can see, big companies like Dropbox and LinkedIn, Twitter, a bunch of other sites have all been breached and my data has been leaked. And if we look at passwords, so passwords were compromised from Dropbox, passwords and email addresses were compromised in LinkedIn. It's not ideal, and it's not anything that we can do anything about. And that is that's the problem. We've got big legitimate companies there, and I didn't do anything wrong. I had my username, my password, I had my information that I needed to give them for the system to work, and through no fault of my own, they were compromised, and now the information's out there. And so the bad guys can take that information and they can start doing credential stuffing, which is when they just throw hundreds and thousands of random usernames and passwords that are found at various places across the internet at different sites. And eventually they're going to be successful. I think they can have a success rate of around 1 or 2% of just trying random usernames and passwords against various sites. And the insidious thing here is that they can sort of gradually build up information around you. So you've just had a couple of junk passwords that you've used at one site and there was no information there. You didn't really care if if someone got it, but then they go to another site and that one, maybe it had your date of birth or it has an address, or they're slowly building up your information until eventually they they have information enough to start causing real trouble for you. They could do forgotten the word, identity theft, or they can do something less drastic but still annoying. They can shut down your account, or they can spam your friends, or they can find your bum's phone number and send her a WhatsApp message saying you need $500, this is your new phone, help. Problematic and annoying things. So we don't want that to happen. It's all doom and gloom. What can we do? How can we minimize or present this? And the answer is that we want unique passwords and we want them everywhere. And so go to the next slide. We get one of my favorite slides. I try to use it whenever I talk about security. It's from XKCD, a webcomic, and Randall Munro, who is a real smart guy, explains the problem with a lot of sort of modern passwords or thinking about passwords. We've all seen that sort of password up in the top left where they, you've got one capital letter, we've got some numbers, we've got a special character in that ampersand. And these are the kind of passwords that we've been taught are good passwords. But he shows here through some, how they say maths, that all that really matters in a password is the length of the password. The longer the password is, the more secure it is from having a computer just go through every single combination of every single character. So the first password is hard for us to remember. The longer password is actually easier, as they say. Hopefully everyone's remembered correct horse, battery staple. So that means we want long passwords and we want unique passwords. And that is where we get password managers. Okay, password managers, sorry, next slide. Boom, one password to rule them all. I love this slide because it shows that I have no imagination. Because I didn't generate that image, I found it on the internet. It's from one of Victoria's favorite movies, and it is from New Zealand, my home country, and it's free advertising for the password manager that I use as well. Because what is a password manager? A password manager is simply a secure place to store all of your passwords. I don't know how many passwords in different accounts you've got. I've got 579 passwords stored in my password manager as of this morning. There's no way that I could remember 579 unique passwords. I could barely remember 579 passwords if they were the same password. So we have password managers where you remember one password, the one password you need to unlock and access the vault that contains all of your passwords. When you need a password, when you need to log into a site, instead of remembering the specific password for that specific site, you just need to remember your master password. You go, you unlock the vault, you get the password for that specific site, you put it in, you log in, you carry on. And so that means that you can have crazy long, complicated passwords that you would struggle to remember, but you can access them easily with just remembering that one password. And I think, we can remember a good, long, strong password, but we cannot remember 579 of these. So that is basically a password manager in a nutshell. You can store different things. You could store, secure copies of your passport or little notes or different things. But in general, it is simply a place to have all of your passwords stored so you can access them when you need them. So now I'm going to do a very brief demo to demonstrate how they work in practice. So obviously the most important password I have is my Domino's password. And as I said before, you've got your passwords. You might access them through an application on your computer. You might access them through an application on your phone, or in this case, I've got a plugin for my web browser. And so here's one password. This is the password manager I use, and it's wanting me to enter my one master password. So as you can see, that was reasonably long. So I've unlocked the password vault. You can have different timeouts on that. That's the kind of thing that I think for me it times out after about half an hour or 45 minutes. So if you go away for lunch and you come back, you'll need to unlock it. When you start work or whatever in the morning, you'll need to unlock it. But when you go to use it, say I just want to go to my account and I want to log in, I just click here, I select Domino's, boom. It's populated my username and it's populated the password, and I click login. That's it, job done. So really, really fast, faster, than typing in the password. Yes, I did have to unlock it with my master password, but that's only done infrequently. In this one instance, it was just click done. And if we look at what you need to do to create an account, that's pretty straightforward as well. So, we can go, yep, I'm example at example.com. My name is test user. My phone number is this really good one. And then when it comes to set a password, 1Password has populated the password field with a suggested password. And as you can see, it's long, complicated, and I'm not going to remember it. But I don't need to, because 1Password, when I go, yep, I'm going to use that, pops up a box. It says, it's 4 dominoes. It's already got what my username was that I typed in. It's got the password. It's got some other information as well. It's storing my name, my mobile number that I've used. It's also saying, hey, do you want to update your Domino's account? Because we saw before that I already have a username and password for this account, and it's aware of that and it's gone, are we changing the password? Is this an update, or do you want to save it as a new item? So you've got a different account. And so I could go update, carry on, or I can create a new one. So that is very briefly the sort of the speed and the usability of having a password manager. I think it's really handy, and that's the demonstration of how just quick and easy it is. So if we accept that we want unique passwords and we want long ones that we can't realistically remember, and we have a lot of them, password manager seems like the obvious solution. Yeah, we could keep a list of all of our complicated passwords written on a notepad next to our computer, but that's not ideal either. And it's not ideal because of the awesome triangle that we're going to see here. So this is a truism in security discussions, and probably in a bunch of other product discussions, but security is a trade-off. It's always a trade-off between being ultimately secure but not working, or being too complicated and not being used, or being really, really easy to use but not secure and not very functional. I'm not particularly convinced that the functionality part of the triangle is too relevant, because obviously if it's not functional, no one's going to use it. So it doesn't seem like that's much of a trade-off. I think it's a balance between the ease of use versus the security of the product. And that's really, we're talking about risk there. We're talking about what risk are we willing to accept. For example, syncing is one of the ones that people tend to look at and worry about the risk of syncing their password. So say you've got a list of, you've got your secure vault on your phone, but you also want it on your computer or your laptop. You need to sync it between those devices, otherwise you're losing some of the functionality. But in syncing it, probably through some kind of cloud service, you are accepting a risk that you are involving, another avenue of attack for the bad guys at some point. Some password managers don't offer syncing, or they offer syncing with third parties, but for the ease of use, I think syncing is an important and critical aspect for me, and I'm not going to use a password manager without it. But you can see that there's a trade-off there, and it's something to consider. Now, the other thing, and the sort of the largest concern that some people have when they're talking about password managers, is the idea that you're putting all your eggs in one basket. You are, you're producing a single place where all of your passwords live, and in the event that something goes wrong, all of your passwords can be exposed, and now you're in a bit of trouble. And that's a legitimate fear. I can't deny that. It's absolutely something that could happen in a terrible situation. But from what I have read and from what I've researched from people, generally accepted that the risk of not using a password manager is worse than the risk that the password manager is going to be breached, because we know, as I said, 579 accounts, I'm not going to come up with good passwords. I'm not going to remember them. I'm going to reuse them. And that is a everyday occurrence that is much worse than the risk that my password manager might get breached, but something to be aware of. And that sort of brings me back to the triangle, whereby you're making a compromise there between being really secure but not having the functionality you want, or not having the ease of use, and it's that trade-off, and you have to accept it. And I encourage you to think about what you're willing to accept and what you want and how easy you want to make it. And the last part of that triangle, not really mentioned in that triangle, is trust. I can't write a password manager. I don't have those skills. So I have to trust someone to do it. And so when you're looking at password managers and considering what you are looking for and the trade-offs you're willing to make, I would encourage you probably not to look for the niche boutique password manager that's two guys in a shed. I would suggest that you look for a well-reviewed, well-organized, professional, large organization that is a legitimate player in the marketplace. I would recommend you have a look at something like Bitwarden. They're a open source password manager, which theoretically means that they're well secure in so much as their code is open and anyone can look at it, and anyone that's having an interest in attacking it, even from a research point of view, has access to their code so they can see how it works, and that's pretty cool. They also have pretty good free tiers. They do have a lot of paid and enterprise tiers, so that's good because we know that they're getting funding from a legitimate source, but they do have good free tiers, and so I would encourage Bitwarden to you. And one final thing I want to say about password managers is that it's not all or nothing. It's not something that you have to do sort of in a big bang. That's it, I'm using a password manager, everything's a password manager. You can, to take a note from our project management friends, you can be more agile in the way that you roll it out. You could start today and you could just say, right, every new account that I sign up for, I'm going to use the password manager. Or you could just put, the top 5 passwords that you use the most or that are the most important. You can put those into your password manager, and over time, slowly add them as you get more comfortable with how the system works and how you engage with it, because it's definitely, it's a bit of a learning curve. It took my partner about 2 years from when I first bought her a license to the password manager I use so that we can share passwords. And initially, we just had the Netflix password in our shared vault, and slowly over time she's added those. So now she's pretty much all in on that. So that's good. So yeah, I just want to make sure it's not I must use a password manager. You can start using it and expand your use as you go along. And now that I've spent some time talking about how I think it's important that you generate unique, strong passwords across various sites, what I'm actually going to suggest is that you do something else, and that is that you turn on two-factor authentication across everything. Oh, I have good. So two-factor authentication is, let's just consider it another line of defense after passwords. Everyone on this call has probably got at least one two-factor authentication. That is for their work Office 365 account. You've probably got it for some other accounts. It is simply another level of security. So you have something that your password, and then you have something that you have a second factor. So that could be an SMS from the system. It could be a rotating number on an app on your phone. It could be one of those old RSA keys that some of you might have used, or it could even be a biometric thing such as a fingerprint or a face scan. But having that additional layer is incredibly valuable and pretty easy to set up. And it massively complicates the job of a hacker, because even if they have their username and password, they still can't access your account without two-factor being somehow mitigated. So while I encourage everyone to get a password manager and use passwords, I also recommend that you check out this 2fa.directory/au, which gives you a list of or a pretty good list of all of the different services that you might be using. So you could look at, say, your banking, and you could go, okay, I'm a Commonwealth Bank customer. Okay, they use an SMS or an app second factor. Or you could look, I think email is probably the most important one that you should worry about, because if someone has your email account, you are in real trouble. So you can see, Gmail, they've got hardware, software, phone call, SMS, or Outlook, tick, tick, tick. So something to consider. And I strongly encourage you to turn on 2FA everywhere you can. And I also encourage you to at least think about starting to move some of your passwords to a password manager. And yeah, that's my 5-10 minutes on password managers.
That's awesome. Thank you for reminding me again that I need to do this. So a couple of questions before I open it up to everyone else. Number one, do you know there was a big breach of one of the big password manager organizations? Yeah, LastPass. And I think, you talked about trust being one of those things, and, you do feel violated because the one company that you trust to help you. And of course, no company is 100% secure, and they're good. If that would be the magic kingdom, right? You get into all the passwords, right? Do you know, because I don't, what was the fallout from that?
Well, the company's still going. So they announced, and I'm not 100% across it, but I know that last year they announced, yes, there was a breach. This is a problem. People should go and change their master passwords. Which, yep, that's absolutely correct. And then more recently, they announced that the cause of the breach was one of the developers' home accounts had some unpatched software, and so they'd got onto the developer's home account, and then they had actually seen the developer put his master password in, which got them access to all of his work passwords, so they could then roam LastPass as a super user, basically. So it was very problematic.
That is incredible.
Yeah, it's not, and it was one of these things. I should have said, I didn't say it, as I should say in all security things. Patch your software. The software that the developer had on his system that was breached was like 75 versions old. It was fixed in 2020. So this guy had really old software, and it was breached.
Okay, you cannot yell at me because at least I haven't gone 2 years without a patch.
I can't yell at you for 2 years, no. So LastPass, I think you would probably not be recommending right now. So yeah, but they're still going. They haven't.
Or they could actually be the most secure now because they would be crazy, on everything. So, but it's always interesting because as a CEO, I'm obviously highly targeted. But to go to the developers because they actually have the keys to the kingdom, that's genius. They're a smart bunch, those cyber demons. And then my other question is, so should we be using this on client sites to get into like accessing not only, I guess, as we access our client sites, get into Telstra or Bureau or whoever. But then once you're in the site that you have to access for them, I mean, is that the best? Is a password manager the best?
I would say yes. So one thing I didn't really talk about, I didn't talk about at all, was the idea of, you can have different sort of vaults or sort of, let's say, folders within your account. So you might have one vault, which is all of your personal accounts, and then you might have a second vault, which is for work accounts. And that could even be shared within teams. So definitely some of our clients will be running password managers and having password vaults that are shared amongst, the dev teams. So if that's what they're using, then obviously we would encourage people to use those. But even, yes, if it's just a single consultant at a client site, if you've got 5 or 6 passwords, again, you're going to struggle. You can probably remember 5, but in general, you should use a password manager everywhere.
Fantastic. Now, if I can remember how to do this, I'm actually going to open up people's microphones for questions. And I just had it. No, I lost it. Well, use the Q&A right now, and we'll see see if I can't find it again. Oh, this is so annoying.
Ask me your questions, Bridgekeeper.
Yeah. Nothing? No questions today, besides my brilliant ones. Well, Tim, you've done a good job. And I have to say, Tim does live it because, we've talked about two-factor authentication for a long time, and the importance of it, but also the keeping your software updated. I mean, really, this is, things that become so important so quickly when you're, on it. So we've got a few coming in.
Yep.
Hey, Cannon, thanks again for participating. He said nowadays there are these smartphones and they have managed passwords, which is how I've been using it, which is, doesn't cover everything. But what do you think about that, Tim?
So yeah, I guess a couple of sort of aspects to that, and I'll also try and answer David's question regarding apps, mobiles with the apps. Apple has the Apple Keychain, which is sort of a whole system password manager for all of your devices. So you log into your Apple ID and you've got your passwords across all of your devices. And so that is useful for, you're on your phone, you're on your laptop, you can log into different things. You can go, yep, I'm just going to access the Apple Keychain. The problem with that, and the reason I don't use it, is that I'm currently using a PC. I can't use the Apple Keychain, so that just breaks. I'm not going to use one that only works for that. For the mobile phones, sometimes, definitely it's better than not using one, so I support it from that point of view. My personal preference is that I've got a standalone app that's not it's not sort of from Google or it's not from Apple. It's a standalone app specifically designed for password managers, in the same way that Chrome, or the web browser, so Chrome, Safari, Edge, they have built-in password managers now, and they're good. And look, if that's what you want to use, that's cool. But again, I don't find them as good because they're sort of added on, because they're not, the browser's purpose is to be a browser. This is a small part of it, and they're not, to my view, as good in terms of the functionality and the usability as a separate application. And also, you do get issues, to touch on David's question. If you've got all your passwords stored in, say, your Chrome, and then you're on your iPhone and you're using Chrome, but you want to get the password for an app, that's a bit of an awkward process. In terms of how you manage a password for an app on your phone, you just sort of, when I launch the application, say Netflix, and it wants my username and password, at least on an iPhone, there's a button that says passwords, and that will take you to the Apple password manager, if that's what you're using. Or if you've got something like 1Password, which I do, it's changed so that when I hit password, it just launches my password manager, Face ID scans me, fills in the passwords, I carry on. So I was going to try and do a little video of that, but I needed to have a 2-camera setup, and it seemed a bit complicated. But it's very easy, works seamlessly. Every so often you run into an application which I assume hasn't followed the norms. So like Bank West, for whatever reason, I need to actually go and find Bank West in my list of passwords and paste my password in. But most apps, it just seamlessly pops up the password, scans my face, fills it in, carries on. So yeah, works fine.
Shannon, I just saw that you were trying to type something. I think I might have allowed your microphone. If you want to hop in, but I might not have.
Yes, you have. Thanks, Victoria. Yeah. Tim, thanks for that. I mean, I was just depending on, you talked about sharing of passwords between, so there is something like I might have a Google phone or an Android phone versus the another device probably, which is Apple, my laptop, which would be. So there again, you answered that anyway. I mean, that is where you use the third party password manager so that I can access everywhere. But sometimes on the mobile phone, these third party doesn't work. That's what I've seen. It's usually it works like only for Android, but not on Apple devices.
Sure, I guess so. That might be, when you're making your decision, when you're looking at different password managers, you might want to make sure that the password manager if you've got a family or a group that you're going to be sharing with, that you make sure that they do support both platforms. So yeah, my partner, she's on Android. So she's got the Android version of the app. I've got the iOS app, and it works fine. But yes, that's a good point. If you've got if the vendor doesn't support both platforms, that's not you're going to be sad. So yeah, good question.
Yeah. Thank you, Tim. Thanks.
Any other? I hope Tim is made the team more aware. I know we've been talking about this for so long, and it is really hard. And I guess there's no way I can prove it, but I do feel like I had things stored in Chrome, and for not updating my Chrome, I do feel that is how someone got some of my passwords at one point. So I'm bad on 2 accounts, Tim, but you've talked me into this. So I'm committing by the end of the week. You can check.
Oh, okay. We're recording this, so that's exciting.
We are recording this. It's on YouTube forever.
Yeah, that's going to be good.
All right. Here's Doug. Hold, Doug. I'll unmute you, Doug. You don't have to. Oh, that's on record. Yes, thank you. With that, we're just a few minutes over. Thanks everyone again. I hope everyone's enjoying these as much as I am, because I think they've been brilliant. Tim, thank you so much for your time this afternoon, and everyone else for attending. Just a bit of a plug for our next one, which is Khan talking about cloud optimization, which I have to tell you, we are doing marvelous things at our client site. So that'll be a really great one. Or actually it might be about the Kubernetes around that. I can't remember. My memory's going. but come to the next one. It's in 2 weeks. And thanks to everyone for coming on board. Thank you so much, Tim.
Thanks, everyone.